So for this video, I'm going to talk about the original Xbox and HDMI. Now, I've got my drink ready, my drink of choice. I suggest you go and grab one as well, because this video might be a little bit lengthy, as there's a few things that I want to talk about in this video. Now, I could have just said Xbox HDMI, panorama cable, review, blah, 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 but I thought, no, there's actually a few things I want to talk about in this video. Some really good things, some not so great things, and also some really bad things. So, yeah, grab a drink, come back and join me once you've done that. It's time to talk Xbox and HDMI. Now, as I'm sure you guys know, the original Xbox, as standard, cannot output via HDMI. I'll spin the console round and we'll have a look round the back of it. So looking around the back of the Xbox, you've got the typical power connector. You've got this single port here for the AV output. And of course, the Ethernet from the good old days of Xbox Live on the original Xbox, which sadly we haven't been able to do for quite a number of years since the service was stopped, or at least the 1.0 version of the service was stopped. So this is how we get our video and audio out of the original Xbox. Of course, you've got RF as an option. Why would you want to use RF and have to tune your TV in? What a pain in the ass these days. It was a bit of a nightmare back in the day. Composite, so those yellow, white and red phono connections. You could also do S-video, I believe, directly from the back of the Xbox with the right sort of cable. And of course, component. Now, in North American Xboxes or NTSC region Xboxes, component made sense, especially if you were lucky enough to have a HD TV back in the day when the Xbox was still a current console, because that did actually happen in some places. Because the Xbox in North America could actually output up to 1080i. Now, that's not me saying that every game could do 1080i, far from it. But you could do 1080i, you could also do 480p from this machine, and 720p as well. So this Xbox is actually capable of doing higher resolutions than just the standard 480i. Or in our case, over here in Powland, it would have been 576i. Now my Xbox here has been modified. This one's got a mod chip inside it. It's also been TSOP flashed, and I've essentially converted it into an NTSC machine so I can take advantage of using component cables. And I've actually got a component box, which I use with this, or used to use with this, because obviously this subject of this video is Xbox HDMI, so I'm going to talk a bit more about that. So basically, you're limited then, as standard, with your options. Now, a couple of companies, Hyperkin being one of them, and also Pound Technologies being another one, have actually made HDMI cables for some of these older machines. For instance, the PlayStation 2, the Sega Dreamcast, and the Microsoft Xbox. Now, you saw earlier on I had the Hyperkin Panorama box here for that HDMI cable. I bought that because I thought, yeah, let's give it a go. Let's see what it's like. It's officially branded. It's actually licensed, I think, by Microsoft. Hyperkin have been licensed for this, which I think is awesome. The fact that the original Xbox is still being given some love, despite the fact we're on the Xbox One X nowadays, as the latest iteration of Microsoft's console. So I thought, yeah, this has got to be good. I'd heard of Hyperkin. I've seen some of their products, in particular their Superboy, which is a handheld Super Nintendo console they released, which I was really impressed with. So I thought, surely they're not going to do a terrible job of a HDMI cable, are they? Well, it turns out, as standard, especially if you've got the same revision of Xbox that I've got here, in fact, both of the Xbox consoles I've got are the same revision, which is version 1.4, these cables, as standard, don't use them. Just do not use them, because basically you get interference on the picture. You get horrible, horrible interference on the video when you use this cable with a 1.4 Xbox as standard. One of the suggestions that somebody put on one of the Pound HDMI videos, because again, Pound HDMI videos and 1.4 Xboxes don't play well at all, it's well known, was to change the three capacitors that sit in front of the CPU and GPU heatsinks. Now, I've not done that on this Xbox, but I've done it on my anniversary Xbox, but I get the same interference, some same horrible wavy lines going across the screen when I try and use that panorama cable as standard. Now, the reason I keep saying as standard is because you're going to see shortly why I'm saying that. So, in its bog standard form, guys, it's not so good. The picture quality isn't great. So, here is my panorama HDMI cable, and you'll notice something a little bit odd about it. So let's all point and laugh at Dave for a moment, because it looks pretty bad. It looks pretty shabby, doesn't it? With that orange wire, that connector there, and this purple wire that's sort of chopped off and hanging out the back. But There's a reason why I've done this, guys. I'm not losing the plot. I'm not going crazy, although actually that's not been proven. I could be losing the plot. This is actually fixing this panorama cable. What I've done here fixes that horrible wavy lines interference problem. Essentially, what I've done here, that cable there, which I'm going to insulate, I am going to cover it so that it's not hanging out the back and you haven't got 5 volts just hanging around here. That is coming from the original Xbox. That's the 5-volt feed that comes down the cable from the original Xbox's AV connector. It actually powers a little converter board that's inside here that takes the component feed from the original Xbox connector and then converts it to HDMI. So I'll try and do this really, really badly, as I always do with these videos when I try and show people stuff. There you go, you've got HDMI and you've got the original Xbox connector there, which is awesome, okay? But for some odd reason on these 1.4 Xboxes, and it might even be true for some others we don't necessarily know yet, there seems to be a bit of a problem with the 5-volt connection or the 5-volt rail that's coming out of this machine or that's inside this machine. It doesn't seem to be providing a particularly clean 5 volts, and that's why I was getting all the interference and all the horrible wavy lines and crap on the screen, which was really frustrating. When I first fired this up, I was extremely disappointed. You know, there was no mention of this anywhere on Hyperkin's site or any places that I'd read to say that this had problems with a 1.4 Xbox. I just kind of took a bit of a gamble that it wouldn't have, and of course, as standard, it does. So what I did was I got rid of that. I thought, let's take that away, and let's find a way of giving it 5 volts externally from another power source, okay? So what I've done, you can see those 2 wires there, soldered onto the 2 parts of this jack here, there's 2 parts of this power jack, and essentially I can feed 5 volts into this via a USB cable or even via an external power supply, and that has been tapped into the 5 volts that should normally be coming from the Xbox straight onto that component converter board, and obviously the ground connection as well, and that solves the problem. The interference is gone. It's a thing of the past when I use this little mod, this little hack job that I've done. As I say, guys, it looks terrible, and I wouldn't recommend doing it the same way as me. I'm sure some really awesome tubers that I watch, people like Yan Beta, Gadget UK 164, they would find a much better way of doing this so that it looks nice and clean and doesn't look janky. Whenever I come up with some kind of fix or with some kind of mod like this, it usually ends up looking a bit dodgy and a bit janky. It works, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't look particularly great. But that solves a problem, which is really, really awesome. It solves the problem I was having with the wavy lines and the interference. So if you've got a 1.4 Xbox, and you happen to buy one of these cables, one of these Hyperkin panorama cables, you might want to consider doing what I've done here, obviously in a much better way, in a much cleaner way, and it will fix the horrible wavy lines and interference, as long as the 5 volts that you're providing through here is decent, because if it's not, you're going to have the same problem. So there we go. That solves that problem. Now, there are other methods, there are other solutions, one of which is a full-on digital solution, which essentially can be soldered into the Xbox. It takes the video signal before it's converted into analog, so you get a full HDMI, full digital HDMI output from the original Xbox. And that's something I might explore further down the line, because you still retain the AV functionality if you want to use the original AV port, but you also then obviously have to modify the case. You'll get a HDMI connector. You can go straight out via HDMI. It's all digital. It's great, because this thing is actually getting analog audio and video through the cable from the Xbox, from the AV port. It's not digital, so it's not going to be at its cleanest, at its sharpest, at its strongest. So that's the downside with using things like this. But yeah, this was really awesome. It really, really was. But then I found out something else that was even more interesting and utterly, utterly brilliant, I've got to say. Again, this is another moment where you should all point and laugh at Dave, because this thing, yeah, I've butchered this thing. This thing looks absolutely horrible. But you can see what it once was. It once was a Wii to HDMI adapter. So you plug this into the back of a Nintendo Wii instead of dropping it on your Xbox. And you could use HDMI. And of course, the Wii could go up to 480p. So that was good. You could use 480p out the back. And generally, the picture quality would look pretty good, I'd imagine, with the right kind of adapter, which this one is not. Because when I use this with a Wii that I recently picked up for free, it got sent over to me. It had a problem with the DVD drive, which I fixed, which I'll probably cover in a future video. When I tried to use this, when it was actually a Wii to HDMI adapter, I was getting jailbar lines down the screen. Again, another disappointing moment of, oh my God. And again, all it's doing is taking the component signal at the back of the Wii's AV connector. And there's a board in here that's then doing conversion to HDMI so that it can be pushed out via HDMI. Now, this is where things are good, then get bad, then get much, much worse for me, okay? I did say that this little thing is awesome, this little hack job is awesome, but yeah, let me go through it. Let me try and explain this the best way I can. So, a guy on Facebook on the Xbox TSOP modding community page, if you like, of Facebook, he posted that for $5, American money, you could make yourself an Xbox HDMI solution, Xbox HDMI converter, okay, which is where this idea comes from. He actually took the time to figure this out for himself, and essentially what we've got here is the Wii to HDMI adapter with the Wii AV connection removed. We've got the original Xbox output connector here, which I've taken from an old composite lead that had seen better days. And essentially we've got some wires soldered from here for things like YB, YP, R, I think it is, which is the component signals, ground, audio, and also 5 volts from the Xbox connector. And it goes into here, powers that board, gives it the signals it needs, and it goes out via HDMI. So again, pretty cool, right? Well, here's the thing. The first question that I asked the guy who came up with this and had posted all of his information online on how it was done, did he do it on a 1.4 Xbox? Because I said to him that I obviously was aware of HDMI issues with 1.4 Xboxes with some of these other cables. Obviously, he said he had done, which is fine. That's all good. But I was having problems. When I then took the time to do this, I was having problems. Now, straight away at 480i, so if I left this thing running in 480i, things look pretty good. Obviously, a bit blurry, but that's because of 480i. But it looked pretty good. I wasn't getting interference. It looked pretty decent. As soon as I played a game, especially games that run in 480p, I was getting lines going down the screen. And I was trying to explain that to him and trying to show him pictures of that. If I use this with my Unleash X dashboard that runs at 1080i, yeah, again, things look pretty good. And I was quite impressed and surprised by how well it appeared to be working. But it's when I started using stuff in 480p, which a lot of the games run in 480p, that I was having issues. Now, I did ask questions. Naturally, I said, look, I'm having this issue. It's a 1.4 Xbox. I've tried it on 2 different 1.4 Xboxes. The thread admittedly got all jumbled up a bit, so posts were a bit all over the place. He did post about some suggestions of things to try. So one of the things was to get a 10 microfarad cap and put it across the power and ground to try and smooth out the power that's coming through from the Xbox, which again makes sense. Of course it does, to try and clean that signal up, or clean that rail up, if you like, that voltage rail up. But unfortunately, that didn't make any difference. But there's a key part to all of this. I did actually say to the guy that this Wii to HDMI adapter had problems with the Wii. Okay? Now, really, that's on me, this one, because I should have realised, okay, if it had problems with the Wii, and I've obviously hack jobbed this connector in and followed a really awesome mod, it's got to be said, then yes, it's going to have the same problem potentially with the Xbox. It makes sense to a degree. So I did explain that to him, and I said, yeah, I'm still having problems. I'm not sure with various bits and pieces, but the Wii to HDMI adapter did have problems with a Wii when I tried to use it. And unfortunately, things took a turn for the worse. So he went off on a tangent and started saying that I was calling him a liar and that he hadn't tried it on a 1.4 Xbox. Nowhere, absolutely nowhere in that thread did I say anything like that whatsoever, or did I even suggest that. So he decided for himself that that was what I was saying, which, come on, man, seriously, read what I was posting. I was just asking for a little bit of help and a little bit of clarity on a few things that I wasn't sure about. I wasn't questioning you. I wasn't saying that you hadn't done X, Y, and Z. Absolutely not, okay? I'd even said that it was likely to be down to the adapter in the end. I did say that. But again, he was off on a tangent. He wanted me to rip this apart, probably so he could point and laugh at my soldering skills, or rip me a new one and say, yeah, you ain't done it right, you're terrible, you're this, you're that, you're the other. This is what really, really pisses me off about some communities. People get so touchy about things, okay? Another guy then needlessly got involved and started making fun at me by saying that the instructions were clear. So, yeah, whatever. And then RetroProFrank came back and said, he's not even running a modified dashboard, referring to me because the pictures I'd sent were of the Microsoft dashboard, because you could clearly see the jailbar lines. And it just escalated from there, guys. yeah, it's one of the things about the community at times that really, really does annoy me. And you can see I've shown footage of the modified dashboard Unleash X running at 1080i, and it looks fine, as does a game running in 1080i with MX versus ATV Unleashed. But that's not the point. A lot of the Xbox games don't run in 1080i. They run in 480p or 480i. 480p being the issue that I'm having. So, yeah. Now, and you're going to wonder why I'm now about to say, well, actually, this guy has a YouTube channel where he showed doing this. You're probably going to wonder why I'm now saying, go and check that out if you're interested. Why would I then go and promote someone that accused me of saying that he was lying about X, Y, and Z and basically was going to rip into me? Well, because I think it's worth you guys looking at it. If you're interested in picking up one of these Wii to HDMI adapters, not this one, as the guy, his YouTube channel is called RetroProFrank, explains. There's another version of this that's much, much better, and it's black, so you'll know which one you're getting, or you should know which one you're getting, hopefully, and he actually links you to that, so you can buy one of these that should work fine. But what I will say, to save you time, if you've got access to a Nintendo Wii console, when you get the adapter, if you decide to do this, definitely test it on a Wii first and see if you get jail bars and horrible lines, because if you do, don't even bother with the Xbox side of things because you're going to get the same problem, okay? I even did the same as what I did with the panorama cable and fed this 5 volts from an external source, but I was still getting the jail bars. So it tells me straight away that there was a problem with this adapter in the first place. But I did explain that to the guy, who I can now call RetroProFrank because that's his YouTube channel. But he just went off on a tangent and decided to just kick off at me. And I felt gutted. I was like, really? At no point did I say that. I was just trying to help, okay? And maybe I'd found an issue that others might have come across. And between us as a community, we could have maybe found a solution. So other people that did want to do this, which is super cheap to do, by the way, and as long as you can solder, relatively small wires onto connectors, you'll be all right. Which, again, this surprised me. I actually managed to get this to work. So shows my soldering's come on some. Yeah, if you want to do this, there's a good chance you'll be successful at it and it'll work. And you'll have it looking a lot better than this. Again, I have to say people like Gadget UK 164 and Yam Beta and co would do a much, much better job than I've done here. But it works. The important thing is it does work, just not very well because of the Wii to HDMI adapter. So it's a shame, but yes, check out RetroProFrank's video. He goes through how this is done. It's a good video. I've watched it because I watched it after I'd had my issues, after I'd done this, to see whether there was any additional steps that I might have missed off. And I was quite open and honest about it. But yeah, he ripped into me. And unfortunately, I did react and did have a go back at him. But then I decided to just forget it, come out of that thread and just forget the whole lot. So guys, it's possible on the cheap to get HDMI out of the Xbox. It is possible. And I would definitely recommend doing it if that's something that you want to do. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you again soon.